Hi everybody, Jan Potker here, and in this video I want to talk to you about why distance-based negotiation skills training, digital negotiation training, is far more effective and impactful than face-to-face negotiation skills training. Now I know that to many of you that sounds probably completely counterintuitive because negotiation is after all a people game, right? But if you stay with me for a few minutes, I'm going to take you through a few points that I've prepared that will demonstrate and prove to you why it's the case that the digital tools that are available to us today facilitates a far deeper, richer, and higher impact learning experience than you can achieve in a face-to-face format. Let's take a look at a few points. Okay, let's start by comparing the kind of traditional model of face-to-face negotiation skills training, which tends to be a 2 or a 3-day course. So certainly I would agree with you that a 2 or 3-day face-to-face negotiation training course will be far better than a 2 or 3-day digital negotiation training course. As a matter of fact, when COVID hit, what we saw most people do, and as a matter of fact, what they're still doing, is they've just moved their 2 or 3-day program from a physical environment, from a face-to-face environment to a digital platform. So that's really digital 1.0, nothing special. And I would agree with you. If your comparison of face-to-face to digital is to compare a 2 or 3-day engagement that was in a face-to-face, person-to-person environment to something that's delivered on Zoom or on Microsoft Teams or on Skype or something remotely, I would agree with you. The face-to-face experience would be far better, much higher impact than a digital intervention. Let's say it was even a little more sophisticated. You had a 2 or 3-day face-to-face engagement, which also included some refreshers, some follow-up, a little bit of focus on sustainability, where maybe 2 weeks or a month or 2 months after the initial intervention, there was some kind of follow-up activity where the content was refreshed, or maybe there's opportunity to ask some questions or deliver some more content. If you would compare that once again to a digital version of exactly the same thing, once again, I would agree with you wholeheartedly. The face-to-face encounter would deliver far more and better value than a digital engagement. Once again, I would say that that's a digital 1.0 encounter. You've just changed the delivery media. That's all that you've done. You've not really given consideration to how to improve the learning experience. You've just, through necessity, taken something that was face-to-face and stuck it on a digital platform. However, if we were to compare a 2 or 3-day, let's say the most sophisticated kind of face-to-face training engagements with something like a 6-week immersive program in a digital format, then the digital training platform and the results that you'll get from, immersing your participants completely in a, environment where there are built-in feedback loops, etc., I can tell you that hands down, the digital experience will far outweigh any impact that you can achieve in a 2 or 3-day format, even including some refreshers in a face-to-face format. Let's look at the detail behind the statement. This is, by the way, what I would call or characterize as a digital 2.0 intervention. So this is not just taking something that's face-to-face and out of necessity delivering it digitally. No, this is about purposely thinking about how can we harness technology to outperform face-to-face engagement, right? So this is not, trying to replace face-to-face negotiation training because we can't meet face-to-face, and now we kind of scurrying to find another method of doing things. No, this is about bringing design to, the learning experience to say, how do we actually outperform the traditional method of negotiation skills training in every way? Let's take a look. So if we were to compare face-to-face to digital, and we create a few little areas of interest for us to consider here one by one. So let's talk about intensity, consistency, and feedback loops in the first instance. So in a face-to-face environment, guess what? It's pretty high intensity, right? So this is often the challenge that we look at when we try to fix a problem, certainly in the business world, the corporate environment. When we want to fix a problem, we say, there's not enough leadership around this place. So Let's develop leadership skills. So let's go on a 2 or a 3-day or even a 5-day retreat, and we do an intensive around leadership skills. And then we disengage and we say, guess what? Now we're good leaders. You and I both know it doesn't work that way, right? We try to fix through intensity what requires consistency. You wouldn't think that, if you want to keep healthy teeth, that you should spend, maybe 1 day a month really brushing your teeth hard, making sure you clean it well, and then do nothing for the rest of the month. No, it's about brushing your teeth every day to maintain healthy teeth, right? This is the same thing that's, prevalent in the world of sports or politics or the arts. There is no success just premised on intensity, right? Where there's no consistency, there simply is no sustained success. So in the face-to-face environment, we tend to have high intensity over a day, over 2 days, 3 days. Some people will even, it would give them bragging rights to say, man, it is so intense. It's full on for 2 or 3 days. But then what happens afterwards? What happens afterwards? We go right back to work. It was a great experience. We feel highly motivated. So yes, it does serve a purpose. It can provide motivation. It can, expose us to principles and things that we didn't understand before. No doubt it's better than not doing any training, right? So no doubt it would be a great idea for you to attend face-to-face negotiation training rather than to attend no training or to just read a book. But that's not the comparison we're making here. We're comparing face-to-face to digital, and specifically digital 2.0, not digital 1.0. So when it comes to consistency, obviously it's very low in consistency in a face-to-face environment. It's a once and done kind of engagement. Almost no opportunity for feedback loops, right? So everything happens, bam, in a flash over 2 or 3 days. No opportunity to really go to the market, test things, come back, make adjustments. Those things don't exist in that format. Often, obviously, in face-to-face engagements, people come together from all over the country, from different states, from different countries, right? So often they're international. So it's very difficult to maintain a face-to-face engagement model, given all the logistical considerations to do so. Of course, we don't have those constraints in a digital environment. So with the right design, yes, maybe the intensity is not so high. If you look at a 6-week program, certainly a 6-week program that we deliver, some weeks the intensity is high. Some weeks it's a little lower. Overall, it's a medium level of intensity where you have maybe engagement, depending on the week that you're dealing with, of somewhere between 4 to maybe 8 or 10 hours worth of learning engagement, practical engagement, week by week, right? Which is over 6 weeks, of course, far more, consistent and intense in some ways than a face-to-face kind of engagement, right? Consistency is high because now, we return focus to key practical elements week on week. We make sure that there's a high degree of consistency required through the implementation of, simulations and practical exercises. So this is it's not just theoretical. It's learn a concept, go and apply it practically, get some feedback, and that's how we create the feedback loops. So in a digital training format, the opportunity for creating feedback loops, integrating feedback loops, is very high. In a face-to-face environment, it's very low. So not really that much time for the practical side of things in the face-to-face environment. How about analyzing yourself, your peers, and benefiting from expert analysis, right? So great idea if you want to improve your skills, if you want to improve your results in anything, is an awareness of your own strengths and weaknesses, right? So once again, this is a universal characteristic of success. There's nobody who's been successful at anything who's not been acutely aware of their strengths and weaknesses in that area. And by the way, I mean, that's one of the best ways that you can ever tell if somebody is an elite level performer or not. Those who believe that they know everything, that they're accomplished, that's as good as they're ever going to get, right? So the moment you believe that you've got this thing covered, you've done it, you've reached the peak level of performance that you potentially can. Well, at that stage, I hope that you're very satisfied with your results, because your results will never improve because you're not open to any feedback. So, this is the hallmark of top level performers, that they're always open to analysis. They're always open to feedback, to correction. I mean, it's fascinating. If you see, I don't know if you've seen, the book written on Bill Campbell by Eric Schmidt, the $1 Trillion Coach, where, Bill Campbell was coach to Steve Jobs, to Larry Page, Sergey Brin, to Eric Schmidt, some of the greatest, most successful business leaders in Silicon Valley. And you'd ask, why do these guys submit themselves to coaching? They're some of the most successful people in the world. But that's why they're successful, because they're surrounded by coaches, by editors, by consultants. This is a hallmark of success. And so when you look at a face-to-face model of engagement, the opportunity for self-analysis is not very high, because now you're sitting in a group of 10, 20, maybe even 30 people. There's not that much time for self-reflection within the space of 2 days. There's content to be delivered. You're interacting. You're doing exercises with your co-participants, etc. There is some room for self-reflection, surely, but not entire. The entire 2 days is not spent on that. Only a small proportion of time is spent on that. Very little opportunity if you really do peer level analysis. Now, obviously, you learn by doing things yourself. You also learn by seeing others do the same thing that you just did, because that creates contrast and helps you to understand different ways of doing things. Limited opportunity within a 2 or 3 day period to really spend too much time doing peer level analysis, and even less time for expert analysis to be done on you individually, right? So one of the weak points of most negotiation training, certainly in the face-to-face format, is the fact that people do group-based negotiation simulations, right? So there is utility value in doing that, of course. I'm not saying that it's hopeless or useless. There's a lot of value in doing those, but not from an individual perspective, because you have two dynamic sides, right? So when you have two variables, how do you benchmark performance against best practice when you have two variables? You have to have one constant and one variable. If you have two variables, most of your feedback is going to be anecdotal and speculative, right? So you need to have a constant. You need to have people negotiating with a professional negotiator, effectively. Somebody who can bring consistency to the approach on one side, so that you can then have relative feedback that can point out strengths and weaknesses and so forth to participants. So that opportunity for expert analysis is very low. If you want to heighten that, if you're working with a group of 10 or 12 or 20 or 30 or 40 people, then you have to bring a lot of instructors on board. You have to work with 4, 5, 6, 7 instructors as the number goes up, because if you really want to do expert analysis, you need a ratio of maximum 6 to 1, 6 participants to one instructor. Even better if it's fewer, if you want to do expert analysis. So that's a real constraint in a face-to-face environment. Not something that you have in the digital space, right? So high opportunity for self-analysis, because there's more time. Peer analysis, the same thing. So the interactions that you have, the simulations that you do on video-based calls, and you record those calls, and then of course they're widely available. You can share those videos to really get insight into how your peers approach negotiations. Yes, don't hear what I'm not saying. Obviously, negotiating via video format and doing these exercises might not be as good as negotiating face-to-face, one-on-one. That is true. But I think that that drawback is far outweighed by the depth of analysis that can take place in terms of the default behaviors that you have, because those will still be true. Whether you are naturally defensive, whether you're naturally competitive or highly assertive, whether you are interested in your counterpart's interest, knowing how to explore those interests, whether you can frame and control a meeting, all those things, that doesn't change whether you're engaging face-to-face or digitally, right? Those things remain the same, because those are part of your nature. Those are part of your defaults. So we can still discern all of those things. Yes, it's a little harder to manage the climate or the environment, and to maybe build rapport and those kind of things that we can do with much more ease face-to-face. But it's far outweighed by the depth of analysis that we can do on all three of those points: self-analysis, peer analysis, and expert analysis, using the digital means of upskilling. Then when it comes to content, we can, maybe if we contrast the two there, the depth of content is at best medium in a face-to-face environment, purely because of the interaction that you're having with, with the students or the participants, the number of activities that you schedule over the course of 2 or 3 days. You're limited by time, effectively, right? So you can't really go all that deep when it comes to the participants' ability to access content. So the content access opportunity, once again, it's limited. It's within the 2 or 3 days that they really have access to that content. Sure, there might be workbooks, etc., that they can take home, but they're not focusing on the content specifically within a teacher-led environment anywhere outside of those 2 or 3 days of initial interaction. And then they have limited opportunity for Q&A. So within the context of the 2 and 3 days, sure, they have the opportunity for Q&A, but over an extended period of time, that opportunity for Q&A effectively disappears after the initial 2 or 3 day engagement. The digital format, the depth of content that you can provide is quite high. As a matter of fact, you can, by design and the way that we've built our program, is you can almost provide people with different varying depths of content depending on their desire and their skill set, right? So, but you can go really deep on some of the content elements. Of course, they can have access to that content for an indefinite time, because part of the challenge that you have is having access to the information when you need it, right? At the point that you need it. And so often, if you did something in a face-to-face environment, those reference points are not so clear. There's no structure that remains after the training for you to be able to access things. Whereas in the digital format, the contents remain available to you, and at any time that you need to refresh your perspective or your understanding of certain content elements, of course, there's a structured way for you to access that straight away. And then you have unlimited opportunity for Q&A. So the program we've designed, even though it's a 6-week program that achieves the skills transformation, you have pretty much indefinite access to the program contents, and indefinite access to Q&A to have problems solved, etc. Right? So that's a huge, huge bonus in the digital world. That's very, very difficult to replicate in the face-to-face world, just due to logistics. And if you work in a corporate environment, large corporate environment, international logistics, complex stuff, not easy to do, very expensive to do in a face-to-face environment, very easy to do, very inexpensive to do using digital technology. And then when it comes to costs, look at this, the hard investment costs that you have to consider when you do face-to-face training. So you have to pay for tuition, you have to pay for the instructors, right? You have to pay, obviously, for travel, for venue, for accommodations, venues, accommodations, etc. You might use your corporate environment for training, but that's also one of the drawbacks of face-to-face engagements. So over all the years that I've done face-to-face training, many companies, if they have 1 or 2 groups only to train, they select maybe an off-site venue to do the training. But when you're running out big programs to big organizations where it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 people in one training, often they use their own corporate facilities, because obviously, it's a huge cost number. But then, the moment you train on your own site, then, the experience degrades significantly, because those people are on their own, premises, and they get interrupted all the time. So they're not even in the training course, as much as they should be over the 2 days. So you have to question whether they're really getting 2 or 3 days worth of training. They're probably only getting a day worth of training in that environment. Only when they're taken out of that environment, which only happens about half the time, can you say that they have a fully immersive experience, really, in a 2 or 3 day format. And so certainly with open programs, and there are other ways that you can control that, but that is certainly something to take into consideration. So that's a high cost. Also, if you're bringing people in from different parts of the country, different parts of the world, obviously those costs can be significant. So just the logistical costs surrounding a face-to-face training course can easily amount to somewhere between 50 to 100% of the cost of the actual training intervention, right? So there's a lot of add-on costs, not to talk about the soft investment costs, right? So I don't know about you, but in the corporate environment, people travel a lot. I spent 17 years traveling about 60 to 70% of the time. And I tell you what, it takes a toll. It takes a toll in relationships, with my family, with my kids. So many things that I missed that I now regret. it took a toll on my health. I mean, I honestly, I was living in a constant state of almost feeling like I'm hungover because of jet lag, because I was flying all over the world all the time, and it takes its toll. Never mind, the people that have to attend some of these training courses, a lot of them do the same thing. They have to fly regularly, they have to travel regularly, and so there's always a debate. Can you schedule things so that people don't have to travel on a Sunday, so that they can spend time with their families? Travel on a Monday only, and try and avoid Friday afternoons or evenings to travel back home because that's so busy. There's a huge impact on well-being associated with travel for training events, right? So obviously very low impact on well-being from a digital delivery perspective, because you can do that from the comfort of your own home or your office, right? So I know sometimes maybe I have to be up late at night because I'm dealing with different time zones, or early in the morning. But I console myself by saying there used to be a time when if I wanted to work with different regions in the world, I would have to be away from home for 7 days. Now, all I have is a late evening or an early morning. Small price to pay. Huge impact on my well-being, on my health, mental well-being, physical health, well-being, the health of my relationships, all of those vastly improved through using a digital delivery model. And then, of course, the opportunity cost. When you're traveling, if if you're doing a 2-day intervention, sometimes you have to travel for a whole day to get there, maybe even 2 days, depending on where in the world it is that you're going. So you have a day or 2 days travel time, then a 2 or 3 day intervention. That's a week gone. What's the opportunity cost? What opportunities go begging as a result of you not being at the office, not being available, not being able to contact your customers, or your vendors, or your key partners. So really, if you compare the two, it's clear that digital delivery is a winner, right? It's a winner. Obviously, as is true in face-to-face training too, you'll get good training and you'll get bad training. You'll get good digital training, you'll get bad digital training. But a well-designed digital training course, digital training program with a focus on consistency and not just intensity will far outperform any face-to-face intervention. And I've had the opportunity over the past year now to do several of these interventions. And we have, to be fair, within our business, within Imperium Negotiation Solutions, we had a running start when COVID hit, and all of a sudden digital training was the flavor of the month. And we could implement a digital 2.0 solution right away. As a matter of fact, we spent many years leading up to COVID trying to convince some of our clients to go digital, because just personally, I was just sick of traveling. I've worked in 65 countries. I've delivered training and consulting engagements in 65 countries. It's crazy. My kids used to travel with me sometimes. My family used to travel with me. But I lived in a whirlwind of hotels and airports for way longer than I care to, or that I'd ever desire to do ever again. And so I had a huge motivation to want to bring to market a digital way of doing things that could eliminate all this travel, because I know that it was mutually beneficial. I don't have to travel. My clients don't have to travel. But can we up the quality? I'm not saying, listen, by all of this, I'm not saying that there won't be the opportunity or the right time to actually have a 2 or 3 day face-to-face intervention around a certain topic, maybe around a certain case, really to get your fingers under the hood, or to get stuck in on solving specific issues. Of course, there's still that opportunity. But what I have proven to myself, and what I hope I've proven to you, is that we can actually far outperform the results of a face-to-face interaction by implementing a robust digital negotiation program that's designed, to be interactive, that, is underpinned by a content management system with built-in feedback loops, with weekly simulations and exercises, with one-to-one coaching, with one-to-one negotiations, recorded video negotiations, simulations with professional negotiators, with myself or some of my colleagues, and then receiving individual feedback, individual profiling, supporting tool sets, templates, scripts, checklists, all of these things integrated in a 6-week program, which is way more than you can ever achieve in a 2-day format. So I want to go as far as to say that if you were one of those you've participated in the program, a 2 or 3 day training intervention that just moved online from a face-to-face environment, then you probably agree with me that the experience was completely suboptimal. And if I'm honest with you, probably you wasted your money. Probably you wasted your money, because it would be a far inferior experience. It'd still be better than doing nothing. Still be better than doing nothing. But you can pretty much write off the money that you spend on that, because ultimately the test of any training course is what behavioral change it brings. And if the behavioral change that it brought is not significant because there was no consistency, only intensity, then you have to question what impact it's going to deliver. So we've designed our 6-week program specifically with the focus on consistency. Make no mistake, it's pretty intense too, but the focus is on consistency, because we know what brings a change, a concrete, substantive, and lasting change in behavior, is a focus on consistency, not intensity. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, that it will provide you with some insight in how you can move forward in the digital world in a way that instills confidence in the outcomes that you want. So you don't have to be wary or afraid of making the decision to invest in digital training. Just make sure that the digital training that you're considering is designed around the principle of consistency, and that it's program-based, right? So that it's digital 2.0, that it's not a digital 1.0 kind of solution. So if you see something that looks a lot like it was a 2 or 3 day face-to-face intervention that's now turned into a 2 or 3 day virtual kind of event, I would save my money. I would pass. I would say either wait to do that face-to-face and then still ask the question whether it's going to be worth your while, because probably not. But I wouldn't go for that one. I would say, that would be casting your money on the water. That you might as well write a check and toss it in the river. It's going to be about as much. You're going to get about the same impact, the same return on your money as you would for doing that. Because if the focus is purely on intensity, it's going to be practically worthless. So, hope that was of some use to you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching this, and I look forward to seeing you in a next video.